All right. Hello and welcome everybody to a special edition of our webinars. My name is Adam Corcoran, and today we're going to be talking about how I use ChatGPT to skyrocket my GIS consultancy. And I know that title is a little bit clickbaity, but that's what ChatGPT recommended. So I haven't looked back yet. I for one, welcome my new AI overlord. But joking aside, you're all very welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I use ChatGPT for, what ChatGPT is, more importantly, what it isn't, and 7 practical tips for getting the most out of ChatGPT, particularly when it comes to GIS consultancy. I'm going to talk a little bit about what ChatGPT is, how you can start using it today in your GIS work. As with all the webinars and training courses that I do, this is not going to be a death by PowerPoint. I do have a few slides to provide some initial context, but I am going to spend most of the time today showing you live examples of ChatGPT in action, how to troubleshoot it, how to get answers to the problems that you have that you might approach ChatGPT with. And as always, you can throw your questions into the chat and I'll try my very best to answer before this session is over. Quick plug. If you like anything about today's webinar, my approach to GIS, maybe you're interested in me designing some custom training for your organization, you can email me at the email chat that I just put in the chat. And if you want to check out all the training courses that I do, there's free and paid training courses on my website. You can check that out as well with the website link I just popped in the chat. But enough of the fluff, let's get started. And really a good place to start is a question you might be asking yourself right now, and that is, who am I? Well, my name is Adam Corcoran, for those of you who don't know me. And for nearly a decade now, I've worked solely with Arcgis technology with over 150 organizations throughout the world, mostly in the UK and Ireland, some in the US, Canada, and Australia. But I've been deploying and helping deploy Arcgis solutions. And I happen to be one of the very few GIS consultants outside of software providers in the UK and Ireland that only deals with Esri's Arcgis. At the moment, I'm working on projects integrating automations between Arcgis and Microsoft, but I've worked and I continue to work with a lot of customers rolling out Arcgis, such as Cushman Wakefield, Amazon, Highways England, Transport Infrastructure Ireland, Tesco, Vodafone, National Broadband Ireland, Ordnance Survey as well. And I suppose who I am in the context of GIS consultancy, that's fine. I work with a few organizations, but more importantly, and I think this is where kind of ChatGPT comes into its own, is the question, what am I? And this is a question that if ChatGPT or any OpenAI tool ever started to ask itself, we'd probably be in a lot of trouble. But for me, what am I? Well, first and foremost, I am a father, I am a husband, I have a 1-year-old son, I have a beautiful wife called Paula. I am a pasty ginger, probably because of my Irish background. Number 4, I am a digital nomad. And so I work remotely. I don't work for a large organization. I'm not a permanent employee of anybody. I am a digital nomad, meaning I work remotely. I am a GIS consultant. I am a GIS trainer. I sell training courses on my website. I design custom training courses for organizations. More importantly, in the eyes of various national governments for tax and legal reasons, I am currently a one-person business. And if we extrapolate this idea that I am only a one-person business, well, then the question becomes, I suppose, what am I not, right? And on my LinkedIn profile, I have everything rolled into one. So I am a director, a consultant, a trainer, a secretary, a tea maker, very fancy words for being self-employed, right? But what I am not, and how ChatGPT, how I came across ChatGPT and how it's really benefited me over the summer months. Well, what am I not in terms of a one-person business? I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a marketeer. I'm not a head of something. I'm not a secretary. I'm certainly not a software provider. And I'm most definitely not a programmer or a developer. So a GIS programmer, right? It's different. There's GIS consultants, there's GIS analysts, there's GIS technicians, there's GIS developers as well. I'm certainly not a GIS developer. And so in light of, where I started my GIS career, in Jacobs Engineering, this huge global engineering giant, where you had tons, and I mean tons of different disciplines. No matter what your question, no matter what your project, you had access to these almost seemingly infinite resources, these infinite number of people across a lot of disciplines. So if you had a legal question on a project, there's a team specifically for that. If you had a custom development piece, there's a team for that. And I'm sure many of you, we work in organizations or we work with organizations, and we have these teams to reach out to. When I worked in Esri Ireland, the local distributor of ArcGIS software on the island of Ireland, on any given day, I could reach out to Esri product teams, the people building Survey 123, the people building ArcGIS dashboards, the people building ArcGIS Experience Builder. I could reach out to them. I could reach out to solution architects, security teams, salespeople from around the world. I can't do that anymore as a one-person business. Now, it's not all bad, right? Enter Chat GPT, because the resources that I mentioned, they're people, right? People have their own schedule. People have their own work commitments, and really they're only available 9 to 5. Maybe they could squeeze in your question or your project, but then there's lead times and turnaround times and all that jazz. And so enter ChatGPT. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole debate. Is artificial intelligence good? Is it bad? What are the dangers of it? I am going to touch on what you shouldn't use it for and a best practice for interacting with it, especially if we're doing work with, customers based in the European Union. We do need to make sure that we are GDPR compliant or compliant with a country's legislation, right? But I'm not going to talk about the whole ethics of it. I see benefits in it, particularly for GIS, particularly what I'm doing, Now, I'm not going to bore you to death on how I'm currently using ChatGPT. I'm currently using it to help myself learn Brazilian Portuguese. The other week, I asked it to give me a gym session because the place we were staying only had 10-kilo dumbbells. I'm using it currently to translate lawyer speak. I'm currently trying to hire GIS people and expand GIS Express, so I'm not just a one-person business. And there's all these different things that ChatGPT can be used for in the realm of whatever you think of. But I'm going to focus on, what benefit it can bring your GIS consultancy skills. So I'm going to be totally upfront in this webinar. I'm going to show you really how the sausage is made, I suppose. And there's two things I never mess with in my business, and that is custom development, whether it's via Python, JavaScript, or Arcade, and enterprise installs. Enterprise installs are notoriously problematic. Every one is different per organization, and I just never messed around with it. So parking enterprise installs, let's talk about custom development, because it was really one of those things, and I'm sure I was in the same boat as many of you guys on this webinar. I messed around with Python and ArcGIS before. I messed around with JavaScript, but I never really got it, and I never really got into it. It was always designed around, hey, look, we have a specific problem on a project. Do we need a developer, or can you do this? And I'd be like, I'll try my hand at it. No, I can't do that. Go to the developer. And when I was starting off my GIS career, I'd be like, hey, look, Python, if I could get Python down, I'd be a super whiz at this thing called ArcGIS, So I'd open up a textbook on Python, try to do an exercise. ArcMap at the time would tell me I don't have XYZ module installed, and I just close down the exercise, close down the workbook, close down ArcMap, and I would never touch it again. And so with ChatGPT, my skills before ChatGPT, hey, look, I've had nearly a decade experience solely in ArcGIS, well up to speed on ArcGIS Pro, well up to speed on ArcGIS Online, well up to speed on ArcGIS Mobile. Configuration, right? With, I can help make it look user-friendly, right? So I have configuration with UX elements fairly high up on my skill set. What I don't have, I'm crap at Python, I'm crap at JavaScript, I'm crap at Arcade. After, right? So my skill levels before ChatGPT became my skill levels after ChatGPT. My skill level remains the same. Okay, so ChatGPT is not one of those things that's going to make me, into a developer, right? But what it does mean is that my ability to problem solve after ChatGPT, I now reach a basic level of proficiency, that ChatGPT is a tool I can use to solve specific problems. So, with ChatGPT, I have a tool where I can find answers. I can solve problems, particularly when it comes to developing. I am not a developer. I am never going to say I'm a developer. On any CV you ever see of me, I'm never going to put any of these skills as anything more than basic proficiency. And basic proficiency means that you can create a script, you can run it, and maybe you can do some basic troubleshooting. But, pretending that you're an expert in something that you're clearly not is not something, I don't think we should be using ChatGPT for, but it is a problem solving tool. And what it's also meant for my business, so to speak, is that all the other areas that come with being a one-person business or a GIS consultant, if you imagine everybody's job, if they're involved in GIS, involves something else. You have to write an email instruction to people. You have to update project briefs. You might have to write a tender if you're private sector organization. You might have to respond to a tender if you're public sector organization. So there's other skills. It's not just about GIS. So what I've noticed is that, hey, look, that marketing speak that was almost inaccessible to me before, I can rinse it through ChatGPT and it's going to translate it for me in a language that I can understand. So marketing speak, lawyer speak, accounting speak. It's helped me design Google Ads to great effect. It's helped me design my website and many more skills that come along, not just in GIS consultants, because nobody's just a GIS consultant. Like I said, what am I, right? I'm more than a GIS consultant. I'm other things as well. And ChatGPT, any text-based exercises, it's really good at giving you a handout. But like I said, pretending that you're an expert in something that you're clearly not, I don't think we should be going down that road. I think, if you are going to use ChatGPT for your GIS technical skills, it's more a means to an end. It's more a tool you can use to solve specific problems. And I think that that's the part that people really miss the mark on when it comes to artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT. There's a lot of videos out there trying to disprove ChatGPT, trying to, set it up to give some inaccurate information, call it a dumb robot, right? And it does tell lies the odd time, right? It does provide inaccurate information. But I think if we approach it as a tool, as a means to an end, we can accomplish some really great things with it. And at the end of the day, is that not what your boss or your organization wants you to do? It wants you to solve problems, and I'm very open with everybody when I use ChatGPT on a GIS project. I don't think it's diminished my value whatsoever because I am upskilling. I know how to maximize my prompts to ChatGPT. I know how to troubleshoot it, albeit through a lot of trial and error over the summer. But I'm so open about it, I'm doing a webinar on it. I don't see it diminishing value of GIS consultants at all. So let's talk a little bit about what ChatGPT is, if you haven't come across it. Right, it's an advanced AI language model. It's developed by this company called OpenAI, and they have their own separate architecture. So the same way Arcgis Online, a lot of apps are built in this thing called JavaScript, and they have a version 4. ChatGPT exists the same way. There's different models, there's different kind of architectures or structures used to build those models. And this one, the latest one, is called ChatGPT 4. They say it's a versatile tool useful for various applications, from research to content generation. It's knowledge rich, right? Like this latest model of ChatGPT 4 is trained on a ton of internet text, a large corpus of text from the internet. It's just sucked into its database. Now it does have, which we will come back to, which is a very important point to note for our purposes, it does have a 2021 knowledge cutoff point. So if we're asking it anything after September 2021, it might not know the answer. That is problematic, and we'll get to why that's problematic for ArcGIS. It's because it updates every quarter. ArcGIS updates every quarter, so it doesn't even know what the latest updates are in ArcGIS. It has an interactive interface as well. It engages in natural conversation and understands context. any text-based exercise, ChatGPT is really good for. But what ChatGPT is not, it's not a facts database. It has limits and doesn't know everything. And this is where it kind of gets caught out on the YouTube videos and the LinkedIn posts saying, oh, ChatGPT, it gave us this thing. And it's like, yeah, okay, but it's not really a facts database. It's more of a tool to use to solve specific problems, right? It has limits. It doesn't know everything. And really, if you're coming to facts, like, there's better tools out there at the moment, right? There's not to say ChatGPT doesn't up its game, right, and become a facts database. But if I'm looking for facts, to Google, you know what I mean? Or I'm going to somewhere else, right? It's not always accurate. It can provide, sometimes incorrect or outdated info. However, we can still use this, right? So the first script that I gave ChatGPT came back with a whole bunch of errors. And I just copy and paste the error messages in, gave me back a result. So it is a refining process with ChatGPT, which we'll cover when we get to the practicals. It's not aware of real-time events. Like I said, it's real-time awareness post 2021 is fairly non-existent, right? So we should be aware of that. And it's not emotionally intelligent, right? It doesn't have feelings, emotions, consciousness. I've never said to it, I'm having a really troubled day. I've never used it in the therapy angle, right? And I'm sure you could, but it doesn't have feelings, emotions, or consciousness, which, is a pro and a con, right? It's a pro in a sense that if it is giving you information, it is giving you, to the best of its ability. If we're using it for kind of GIS optioneering workflows, it doesn't care if you really like ArcGIS dashboards. If there's a better solution out there, it's going to propose that. But the one thing I would caution you, genuinely, you join this webinar talking about ChatGPT, ArcGIS consultancy skills. The one thing I would never do with ChatGPT, and there's a whole bunch of news articles out here. Samsung have a really they made a dog's dinner of a product they were working on, fed it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT keeps everything, right? So do not feed it any personal identifiable information, not only from a GDPR standpoint, but also their privacy policy on their website, OpenAI. Hey, look, it's transformative technology. It's a great tool. Don't feed it any personal information, solely because it's written into their privacy policy that they keep your data, right? So anything you feed this machine, they keep it, they train the model. And that's one thing we just need to be super careful of. If you're putting in any project specific information, don't name the project. I always call it, I am working on project A, right? And keep it generic as possible, because what it's not meant to do, what ChatGPT is not meant to do, is replace people, right? So you always have to come with your own knowledge. You know what's right, you know what's wrong, in the sense that, there's GIS projects, what you're looking for, and we shouldn't use it just to replace your input on things. We should use it to help your input on things, to provide more technical information or eliminate these kind of basic rudimentary facts, these tasks that you're working with that can be done better with, an AI model, right? So let's get cracking on this. So let's talk about 7 practical examples that I use ChatGPT for on the GIS consultancy side of the house, right? So this is ChatGPT, right? So it's the same way ArcGIS Online or social media works, right? Like you get a username, password, you sign up. Now, the free version is this thing called GPT 3.5. I'm on the paid version just because it really has transformed. Like when I look back over the summer, it really has transformed the way I kind of work. And the opportunities it's opened up for me, it saved me an awful lot of time. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about 7 practical examples, right? Live examples of how you can use ChatGPT for ArcGIS. Now, I'm on the paid version. So if, let's ignore all this for a second and let's go down to the bottom left. You can see, okay, I'm signed in. And if I click these three dots, I could see, oh, my plan is, hey, look, it's $20 a month that you get access to this GPT-4, our most capable model, right? And it does have faster response speed. And then as soon as this next, I presume it's 4.5 or GPT-5 gets released, get access to that. But ChatGPT 3.5, you've seen, look, GPT-4 is the much better, faster, more capable model. It does have a cap of 50 messages every 3 hours, but I mean, you're not gonna, you want to be going hell for leather on the thing if you're going to approach any kind of level of that number. GPT 3.5, you get it, it's free. Again, they keep all your data, right? So like anything you feed this thing, they keep it and they use it to retrain models. So you have to be very careful on how you use this thing. But down in the settings, right? So I have settings, which I'm not going to get into, but I have this interesting thing called custom instructions, right? And my custom instructions, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? Well, first off, if I am in Europe, right, and I'm speaking English, I'm not speaking English in the US version. So I'm not putting Z's everywhere, right? Where there should be S's. So I say, I am from Ireland. So I write in English, UK. And we don't even need to go into it, like Savior, we only have like 1,500 characters here. So I write in English UK, it'll get that. It'll pick up English UK. Okay, cool. So optimization is spelled with an S instead of a Z. Perfect. I am a GIS consultant, only working with Esri's ArcGIS software. And you can go on and you can tell ChatGPT all about these different things, which I'm not going to waste your time with. How would you like ChatGPT to respond? Now, this is where things can get creative, as we'll see. But, I would like to keep things, as I do, right? I keep things a little informal, but not too informal. I occasionally write project briefs, for example, that I need to be grammatically correct and written formally, right? And I can save that and I can give ChatGPT. So look, I mean, they have all these prompts, like, it depends on what you're using it for, but if you're just using it for GIS, there's no problem, like Esri's ArcGIS software, it's not personal information, it's very public, I'm a GIS consultant, cool, I'm from Ireland, okay, fair enough, you could probably narrow it down, but there's a lot of GIS consultants working with Esri's ArcGIS in Ireland, right, for other organizations. So you can keep it as vague as if you want. You don't even need to fill this out. Oftentimes, this is a new feature, so I haven't even used it that much, but I do find like it's good that I don't have to continuously correct the model to say, look, man, I'm writing in UK format. Stop with all these Z's everywhere, yeah? So let's go ahead and go about the first thing that I really use ChatGPT for, and that is to write methodology notes. So oftentimes I'm greeted with a piece of analysis, right? So, hey, Adam, can you do this piece of spatial analysis on XYZ? So I do the spatial analysis. I'm very good at doing the spatial analysis in Pro. What I'm not so hot on, and that takes up a good bit of my time, is actually writing the methodology that comes along with it, right? So when I do a piece of analysis, hey, I get the results. I'm about to send on the results in an email, but then how do I provide contextual information? And how do I make sure that the analysis is robust enough? So I can start to write into ChatGPT here, and I mean, when we're talking about, ChatGPT is a chatbot, yeah, fine, but I don't need to say like, hi, ChatGPT, how are you today? You can if you want, it's just a bit strange. So I just prefer to get straight to the point. I did a piece of spatial analysis in ArcGIS Pro. Always give it the version as well that you're working with, right? So I'm working with version 3.1, the latest version. It won't know the latest version of ArcGIS Pro because the knowledge cutoff is September 2021. It involved a data set called points input, right? So keep it generic as possible. So don't say like, yes, I did. So if you did it for cafes or you did it for like all government buildings in the UK or historic buildings within Cork County, you don't want to give it that. You want to make it as generic as possible. It involved a data set called points input, which contained 400 locations, whatever it is. And again, I'm making this as vague as possible, but you expand upon it for your own use case. And I created a 2-kilometer buffer from each point. So I had points, my points input. I ran a 2-kilometer buffer on it. I then selected by location all the data set select maybe, right? So if we're talking, right, about what it actually is, I have my points input. And let's say they are cafes, right? And I created a 2-kilometer buffer from each point. I then selected by location. So I use select by location in ArcGIS Pro. Data select 1 and data set 2, both point data sets, to filter all the records from, sorry, I should have called that data set. So I have data set 1 and I have data set 2 and data set 2, and I then exported both outputs to Excel using the analysis tools in ArcGIS Pro. I want you to write me a robust methodology that I can include in an email along with the Excel outputs. And if I enter that in, all right, it's going to come back and say, certainly a clear and robust methodology will help your colleagues and clients understand the steps that you've taken to arrive at your results. Below is a methodology section that you can include in your email. And it starts to output it. Now, I've kept it generic because I'm going to go in, obviously, right? Like when I do copy and paste this in to an email, into a Word document, I'm obviously going to have to replace it. But at least it's given me, a go-to kind of outline, right? And I say, do you know what? Like, that's fine, but maybe, sorry, I was thinking, give me more detail. And Chat GPT is great. Like, look how fast this thing generates. It's just like detailed methodology for spatial analysis. And so it'll start to talk about the objectives, the software and version. Now what it hasn't included there, which I probably would, is the date, right, that this analysis was carried out, but the data sources as well, right? So like, if I need a website link back to a data source to say, I took this from this website, the coordinate system, absolutely essential for any methodology notes that we're including. So this is an example of, I have knowledge of what I did, and now I can use ChatGPT to just explain what I did. So ChatGPT didn't do the analysis, but I am using it as a tool to start going in and say, hey, this piece of analysis, this is how I did it. right? And then the great thing about ChatGPT is that I can copy it. You can as well give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down, and that helps them retrain the model. I don't mess around with that. I just give it a prompt, copy it if it's good, or refine it if it's not. And then when I'm into my Word document, I can start going in and formatting it. Now, you'll see as well where ChatGPT outputs bold text, it'll give this kind of hash sign, right? This pound sign that you can go in, delete. I like keeping that in, right? So I just copy it directly into it because it means then, like, I do have to read everything. And I say, okay, data set 1, I can just replace, right? Control find, just replace it and say, hey, find data set 1 and replace with planning applications database. Oh, my keyboard went a bit nuts. August 2023. I can just replace all those ones. It's made 7 replacements. Perfect. And I can tidy it up from there, right? And I can put in any links that I need, specify coordinate system, or I could refine this further as well. ChatGPT is great in the sense that, okay, I have my methodology. Now write me an email outline where I share these steps to a colleague who wants to undertake the same analysis, but with different data sets, I could say, right? And you'll see as well, any prompts that I'm giving ChatGPT, I'm keeping it fairly basic, right? Like short, simple sentences are the way to go with ChatGPT, right? So I'm writing an email outline where I share these steps. The colleague has basic Arcgis Pro training. Maybe they did a GIS Express training course, right? Has basic Arcgis Pro training, and you should keep it as basic as possible. And basic, I can always go back in and say simple, right? A good thing to note when ChatGPT goes in, so when I say click send message, I can stop generating as well and say, I actually made a mistake, and just come back in and edit it, so I say, let's just remove the word basic, so keep it as simple and straightforward, for instance, as possible. Let's save and submit. And then it's going to generate, right? So it's going to say, for sharing the methodology, who has basic ArcGIS Pro training. It'll even give you, I hope you're well. I recently completed a spatial analysis. Probably not going to use that because a lot of times it comes across as a bit cheesy, like a large corpus of text that it's trained on the internet. It is the internet where a lot of cheesy things do exist, particularly when we're talking about sales and technical abilities as well. There's a little bit. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and it's just like the way it writes, you probably need to top and tail it, but again, the objectives are good, like to identify points within a 2-kilometer radius of a set of locations, to export the results. That's bang on, right? The software needed, ArcGIS Pro, always best just to keep it at the same version, your version, right? Like, and it's telling me, it's just giving me the methodology notes based on what? 3 lines of text. And now it's put in all this text that I can use as a starting point. Obviously, if you like your colleague, maybe you can just copy and paste it in, right? But I would never do that. Like, I need to go in. It gives me a framework to go from, and then I can copy and paste this in an email. Like, it's given me all the steps. It said even like a very important step that I didn't even mention in the prompt, that it said data preparation. And that is always key, right? The first step on anything regarding ArcGIS, load your data sets. Make sure all your data sets are in the same coordinate system. So when we go to run analysis, it's actually giving you accurate outputs. Like, this thing is incredible. Right? And we say creating buffers, go to analysis tools, proximity, buffer. I can easily follow along these things. And I can say, nice one, I run the tool, navigate to analysis tool, overlay, select by location, use the buffer as the input and your data sets as the target layer. Like, how many times have we been in emails, if this thing didn't exist, like I could have used this when I was working in Jacobs Engineering, when I was working in Esri Ireland. That how many times have we had to go in and rely on a senior GIS person's email and say, what do you mean the select layer by location? Where do I find that tool? Or what? There's numerous ways to get an Excel sheet out of ArcGIS Pro. Which one do I use? And ChatGPT just simplifies the whole thing, makes it as straightforward as possible. The second way I use ChatGPT is, I am a GIS person, like many of you on this call. I am actually really crap, right, at promoting myself, right? It's one of the things I really struggle with, and I think that's industry wide. Anytime you have like an industry with a lot of technical people, we do struggle to kind of up ourselves up a little bit. Like we kind of underplay the importance that we played on projects, perhaps, whatever it is. And ChatGPT is a really good way. I recently had to write a CV during the summer, and I used ChatGPT, and I said I worked as a GIS analyst in Jacobs Engineering, right? And you can name like companies, right? This is not personal identifiable information. And who cares? It's on my LinkedIn profile anyways, right? So just be careful, right? Always bear in mind when you are writing these prompts in, be like, do you need to name this company? Do you need to name this data set? Right? Just be very careful about that. The software, all public domain anyways, like ArcGIS Pro. What are they going to do with that information, right? I worked as a GIS analyst in Jacobs Engineering, and I worked on two major projects. And I can say this is project A, so I know what project A is, and project B. For both projects, I had to create a map series, whatever it is. Keyboard's going a bit nuts. A map series in ArcGIS Pro for land parcel layouts. Give me a few sentences about this that I could use in my CV, right? And so note that I'm not asking ChatGPT to create my whole CV. You can, of course, 100%. But you see where it's come in and it said, like, okay, I don't actually need to up anything that I did on these projects. In my role as a GIS analyst at Jacobs Engineering, I significantly contributed to two major projects, Project A and Project B, where I specialized in creating map series in ArcGIS Pro to effectively visualize land parcel layouts. These map series were instrumental in project planning and decision-making process, and they garnered positive feedback from stakeholders for their accuracy and detail. It's done my job for me. It has said, these things are true, right? Like the map series was instrumental. Hey, look, the whole projects were based on map series in ArcGIS Pro. Perfect. And now I can copy that, bring it in and replace if needed, right? I could also say, and the third way that I use ChatGPT in my GIS consultancy is for clearer communication. So we talked about the methodology notes. We talked about upping ourselves a little bit, promoting ourselves, right? It's very good at that. I'm not asking it to write the whole CV for me. I'm just asking it, little prompts at a time. You can, of course, play around with ChatGPT, get it to write your whole CV, and so long as it's true, right? Like it goes back to our point. Don't pretend to be a developer because you asked ChatGPT for a script and it ran successfully. You're not a developer just yet, right? Because you don't know what's going into that script. But if we're using it as a tool, we can say, hey, look, just give me a start in the right direction. Because oftentimes it's very stressful starting a GIS project from scratch. You have a blank canvas. You're like, mate, what am I doing here? And it's good to have that kind of back and forth. Give me an outline of this project, whatever it is. And one thing that I really like about ChatGPT is writing these kind of en masse emails. And the reason why I like that is because I don't need to worry about it. I just need to correct it in the sense. So, for instance, I had a customer do a migration of ArcGIS Online accounts. So they migrated from an ArcGIS Online US-based server to an EU-based server. And the idea is that, well, you got a whole bunch of users to migrate to this new system, right? So using ChatGPT to outline the email I have a customer who has migrated their Arcgis Online account from US servers to EU servers. They are in the process of migrating their users to the EU AGOL. And note that ChatGPT knows what AGOL is. I don't need to explain it, right? Like it knows because it's based on like text on the internet somewhere, somehow people have said ArcGIS Online equals AGOL. And I can use these kind of terms as well, and it's going to pick it up. Are in the process of migrating their users to the new EU AGOL, which is now live. Can you write me a simple email describing that the EU AGOL is now live and users should log into the new EU AGOL and delete any bookmarks they have saved for apps on the old one. Also mention that they now, my keyboard is having a moment. Also mention that they now have access to Esri training, right? Whatever it is, put in the website. And to reach out if they have any problems. And then, oh, I forgot, their username, password will be sent in a separate email. Absolutely. Here's a straightforward email that gets to the point. Right. And look, I mean, the introduction text, you're obviously going to replace it, but at least what it does is it clears up that communication, right? So the gap between the two, logging in, old bookmarks, Esri training, perfect. And now if I say, do you know what, you give me next steps, okay, cool, I'm going to have to put a bit more work into it. Please be more detailed for less technology advanced colleagues, you might want to say, right? In a polite way. And it's going to be, please be more detailed. And it's going to write a more detailed, comprehensive email. But look at the speed that this thing is churning out text, you know? And what this means as well is like, mention who the customer is, mention any personal identifiable information. But I've given people steps in the right direction and say, you will receive a separate email, perfect, old bookmarks, and then access to Esri training that they have. Okay, cool. Step by step for deleting old bookmarks. Okay, probably unnecessary. But, you know, if we are talking about give me as much detail as possible, ChatGPT will do that, right? Now, let's talk about how I can actually get ChatGPT to start helping me out in ArcGIS Online. So the fourth way I use it is to be creating automation. So I mentioned, hey, look, I am not that great in Python. I'm not great at all. In Python, JavaScript, Arcade, very weak points for me, custom development. But let's say I have a customer and we have a feature layer here. So it's called Waterford City Historic Buildings. If I open up the visualization tab, you can see it's all kind of national inventory for architectural heritage in Waterford. So it's a city south of Ireland. And it's a point feature layer, okay? Now, what I want to do is if I'm rolling out a workflow and people are going to be continuously updating this feature layer or editing it, it's important always to have backups. So one of the key ways that, you know, ChatGPT has kind of transformed how I approach GIS consultancy is that now I can start to back up everything, right? So these business critical data sets, I can back them up on a daily basis, a weekly basis, whatever it is. But at least, you know, the value add to customers and, maybe to your bosses in your organization, is that now we elevate the conversation. So as opposed to saying, oh, Jesus, we're going to have to back this up on a daily basis. Okay, we're going to need a GIS developer. Okay, it's like $1,000 a day, right? We don't have the money for that. Is there any way we can figure this out? Yes, Chat GPT, right, can figure this out for us. So let's talk about the prompts that I do. So I know in ArcGIS Online, we have a thing called notebooks. And I know in notebooks, it's used for scripting. That's about all I know, right? Let's say that's all I know, right? I just know there's scripts available in notebooks. So maybe I search backing up data in Google, right? ChatGPT is not going to replace Google. So I Googled it first and I said, it can be done, but it can be only done in notebooks. Okay, let's talk about notebooks then, right? So I have a point feature layer in ArcGIS Online called, and I don't really care about this because it's my, right, this is publicly available information that I'm putting in anyways, historic buildings. And I want to use notebooks in ArcGIS Online to export this data set to a file geodatabase. Yeah. Or let's even say this to an Excel file, Excel sheet, right? Or an Excel workbook on a daily basis. Write me the script. And if you're worried about ChatGPT taking over the world, you can say, please, will you write me the script? Right? You can be as polite as possible if you want. If you think they're going to keep everything as record, take receipts, hold grudges, you can do that. But ChatGPT has come back like instantaneously almost, right? Certainly automating the export of a feature layer to Excel using notebooks and ArcGIS Online involves using the ArcGIS Python package, which can interact with ArcGIS Online. So already I have context about what it is I'm doing. Below is a sample Python script you can use in your ArcGIS Online workbook to export your historic buildings point feature layer to an Excel workbook. Firstly, let's make sure to install the required Python package. In your notebook, you can install it using pip install within a notebook cell, like so. Here's the script. And replace your username, replace your password with the actual ArcGIS Online username and password. Right, and it's even given me best practice as well. For security reasons, it's recommended to store these in a secure place and not hard code them into your script. Replace your feature layer URL with the URL to your historic buildings. You may need to adjust your query parameters to make this run on a daily basis. You can schedule a notebook to run at your preferred time through ArcGIS Online. We're probably going to need more information about that. And if we run into anything, we can do. So what I would do is just literally just go into Notebook, right? And new notebook. Now we have a few different options, standard, advanced, advanced with GPU support. I can go back into GDP or Chat GPT and say, I have 3 options for notebooks. Standard. My keyboard is definitely having a moment. Advanced and advanced with GDP. Which should I choose? Okay, so it's going to tell me the type of notebook you should choose. It's going to run through each one, give me a description. So you can see how this is like invaluable if you have problems in ArcGIS Online. You really have a few different options. You can Google the problem, right? In which case you're going to be redirected probably to like the Esri blogs on things. You can contact Esri support. Don't know how long their lead-in times are, right? Like, will it take a week? Will it take a day? Will it take 2 weeks to get back and get your problem solved? No idea. Or you can go on a training course, right? Or you have a GIS consultant on your payroll, right? Or you have a package with them. But ChatGPT, right? If I know what I'm doing and I'm saying, right, I'm doing this, this popped up, what am I actually doing? It's actually recommended, hey, you should use the standard option. So let's go ahead and click the standard option. And it just means that I can get to the answers quicker. That I'm not relying on people coming back to me. I've fed it the information. So it's not going to make up, oh, there's a thing called basic notebooks. That doesn't exist. There's standard, advanced, and advanced with GDPU support. Now, if this existed before September 2021, which it did in this case, we're golden, right? We don't need to rely on it. It's going to load up my notebook and I can paste in, right, my username and password, my feature layer URL here, and I can go from there. Now, if I have a problem running it, right, so I'm not going to put in my username and password in front of everybody. But if I run this now, I'm going to get an error on something, right? What I can actually do, right, is just go in, highlight this, ArcGIS login error, right? And you don't even need to trace back the whole thing. You can, if you want, copy and paste this in. And then I just paste it in to ChatGPT. Right. And so long as the thing knows, oh, I've written you a script, looks like you've run into an authentication error, the error message specifically states, okay, so, right, I obviously didn't put in a username and password because we're kind of pressed for time at the moment, but you can see how you can start to refine your processes for ArcGIS Online, right? And we can start to see how we can refine things. Okay, I've tackled a notebook. I need to go in, put in my username and password, feature layer URL, but the same principle applies. I do something, I get an error message, I feed this error message back, which is, right, it's a machine talking to a machine essentially, right? Because I have no idea what any of this means, but ChatGPT does, and ChatGPT can refine it. We'll get to a solution, right, eventually. And as well as that, right, we can, use this to write Arcade. So for instance, just to finish off, because I know we're pressed for time, it took up a lot more time than I thought, but say I have, polygon boundaries and I have a point feature layer within it. I want to count up, how many points fall within a polygon area. I have no idea how to do that. I know based on a Google search that I can use Arcade to do it maybe, right? I can go back into ChatGPT and say, I have a polygon feature layer in my web map in AGOL, and I have a point feature layer overlaid on it. How can I use Arcade, right? So a programming language that I'm deficient in. How can I use Arcade to count the number of points within each polygon or the polygon pop-up? And it's going to bring me back and say counting the number of points within each polygon using Arcade for your web map. We go to our web map, configure pop-up for polygon layer. So it's giving me instructions on how to roll this thing out. So it's given me and said, var point layer, feature set by name, map, point layer. So I can copy code within this, or I could say, yeah, that's fine, but rewrite the code snippet because my point layer is called, and you can go in, you're right, like whatever it is, bear in mind if it makes sense for your project, right? My point layer is called hospital locations. Just because we're pressed for time, I'm going to get ChatGPT to give us the exact code snippet that we need to put in here. And my polygon is called Ireland boundaries. Ireland counties, I should say. And it's just going to rewrite the code snippet then. And now what I can do is just copy that code in. And again, right, like I appreciate them glossing over these things, but I follow Chat GPT's instructions. Going to go configure the pop-up for the polygon layer, create arcade expression. So let's see where we are. Pop-up, arcade expression. And then I can just paste that in, call it new expression, call it count, whatever we want to do, and just hit done. Now it'll take a second to load up, right? But eventually when I click on the pop-up, it's going to tell me how many hospitals are within, right? And I need to go back in and say, okay, my text. So at the moment, if I click on a pop-up, it's just going to tell me the county name. No, County Monaghan. I'd need to go in, add the actual field to it. So if I say there are, right, via way of custom pop-ups, open my curly brackets to get my fields. Right down the end, I should see any attribute expressions that I have in this county. Click OK. It'll refresh and say there are one in this county. Okay, if I click on Galway, let it load up, and I should see within my pop-up an arcade expression that I built from scratch using ChatGPT. It might take a second to load just because, you know, I'm doing a lot, but it's counted. There are 3 hospitals in this county. If I zoom in, see 1, 2, 3, and that is a way I can use ChatGPT to really elevate, you know, your GIS consultancy skills. And also, you know, what I do like to do, like, none of this matters if we're not having fun with it, you know? So like, okay, it's giving me an arcade expression, but rewrite your instructions for the arcade expression, but in the style of Hulk Hogan, right? And if you're not having fun with this thing, you know, then what are we really doing here, right? So I'm gonna ask it, rewrite your instructions, because it's based on like the internet, right? And now already it's come back in the style of Hulk Hogan and said, all right, brother, listen up and listen good, because the Hulkster is about to drop some arcade knowledge on you, right? And it's given me everything that it has, right? But in the style of Hulk Hogan. I could do this infinitely, right? If I'm having a slow day in work and I want to just have some fun with it, you know, like ChatGPT, I'm sure didn't get a chance to run through everything that I wanted to do. You know, there's countless options, enhancing dashboards with HTML, optioneering potential workflows is where it could come in, you know, like, hey, I want to build a server 123 form that feeds into a dashboard in real time, but I want to have kind of, you know, automations based off of it. It's going to update an Excel sheet in the background, whatever it is, you know, the flexibility is there, the creativity is there. And just to finish off though, just you know, because I do have a slide on this. Whoa, we're going. And you're right. So like I did have a few other things. I will put them in an email if you want to reach out to me. But we talked about methodology notes, promoting yourself via CVs, clear instruction emails. They're really the top 3 things, right? Like, okay, we can use it for automation, but if you're not a GIS developer, you might not have opportunities to deploy these scripts in a project. Like I said, right? Don't use ChatGPT as a facts database. Never give it any sensitive information, but do have fun with it. You know, it is there. It is a tool to be used, right, by you as a means to an end. So if there's any problems that you need solving, ChatGPT is a good way. If you come to it with your facts, with everything lined up. And again, like, have fun with it, you know, like it's not the end of the world just yet, you know, with OpenAI. you know, like do have fun with it. It is a tool. Like if we're not having fun in work, I don't know what we're doing, you know. But look, if you like this webinar, please check out my website. Launching this thing later this month called GIS Express workshops. If you're into it, essentially it's going to be a 12-month program and run through everything you need to know about ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Mobile Suite from the perspective of a GIS person, right? So it's not your, you know, friendly neighborhood software provider type of training where you get these perfectly manicured data sets. It is one live lesson, one pre-recorded lesson per month. So you get 2 lessons per month and you get the best of both worlds, right? I'm always asked, what's the best way to do these things, to roll out these trainings? You know, is it pre-recorded so it's self-paced? Is it live lessons? And my answer is always a mix of both. But we're doing something new, you know, with it. Hopefully, if you are interested, it's called GIS Express Workshops. It's on my website under courses, and it's launching on the 20th of September, I do believe, our first live lesson. But then it goes out every month, right? So you get 1 live lesson per month, you get 1 pre-recorded lesson, and unlimited Q&As with me. So if there's any project-specific problems that you want to address, you ask me any question you want, I'll record the answer and I'll stick it in to the library so people get this kind of technical resource library as well. But look, that's enough from me. If you are interested, we didn't cover 2 other points in Chat GPT, what I use it for. If you are interested, I'll put it in an email to you if you want to reach out. Like I said, you have my email address, adam@gis-express.com. The email, happy to talk, happy to tee up calls, whatever suits. And look, thanks so much for joining our webinar. This is being recorded, so I will put it out on YouTube, and I'll stick around. If anybody wants to ask any questions, you can do so in the chat, or if not, have a great day. Thanks so much for joining, and hopefully we'll chat about GIS some other time. All right. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can do so on the website as well. That's where I put out most of my things. But thank you so much for joining. Hope you found it helpful, and I will catch you again on our next webinar. All right. Thanks so much.